Hey, buddy, what's going on? It's me, John D. Villarreal, joined by Paul at Villarreal. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. The debate is happening. It's going to be happening. Let me just make sure we're live here and doing everything. Yes, we are. Everything's good. The debate is happening. And we don't have the exact specifics of the debate of where it's going to be or exactly when it's going to be. We do have some information. This has been going on for a while now. Candace Owens and the Daily Wire have gone their separate ways. There's been a lot of talk about it. We've seen lots on Twitter between, Ben Shapiro and Clavin said some different things, and he had a podcast. We've seen Ben Shapiro with Piers Morgan, Ben Shapiro with Megyn Kelly. There's a lot of different discussions out there. We've seen Officer Tatum talking about this on his show. We've seen the Quartering talk about this. This is big. This is a big deal. Joined by Paul Villarreal by phone. And let's put this up. I may or may not play this extremely small clip and talk about it from Patrick Bet-David. Patrick Bet-David on his podcast just had Jesse Waters from Fox News. And let's just show this real quick here on the stream. And this is from Patrick Bet-David. Quote headline, and just dropped this yesterday. The headline, and he's showing a tweet from Candace Owens. Right, but the headline from Patrick Bet-David is, quote, conservative civil war, unquote, Jesse Waters predicts winner of Candace Owens versus Ben Shapiro debate. He talks about it, he goes into it, and he goes through these different things. Here's the tweet by Candace Owens. And we may talk about it. It's basically Patrick is just reading this, so I don't know. I may or may not play just a little teeny bit of sound there, but I don't know that it's necessarily needed in this case. Because he said basically, what Candace Owens is saying here, quote, because they went back and forth to Jeremy Boyne about, hey, you got to show up in our studios and no moderator and 5 o'clock and on Monday and this, and they were going back and forth. Finally landed on this, quote, I fully accept no moderator. I will get in touch privately to set this up. Major win, hands and then America and whatever. So very, very interesting. Very interesting right there. And I can, like I said, I can play the sound very, very quickly here from Patrick Bet-David, but I don't know that it adds a ton more. We might come back to that. We'll see. Paul, what's your take on that right now? I have a lot to say about this. I have a lot to say about where we are and how we got here. In some respects, I'm kind of getting bored of it. Both of these folks have been, dominating the headline. But I do think it's a very important conversation to be had, and it's kind of like the same conversation we're seeing with Trump and the donors. We're seeing Trump and Mitch McConnell. We've seen MAGA basically take over the conservative movement, the Republican Party. What do you think about this debate? What do you think about Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro?
Well, look, what I've seen people say on Twitter, I've seen a bunch of things. Obviously, I've seen people talking about it and what's going to happen in the debate and so forth. I've also seen people who have taken one side or the other in terms of the overall discussion between those two. And I've seen people say, look, we don't really necessarily need to be infighting right now with the election coming up. I kind of tend towards that. And I like you said, I'm kind of a little bit bored of this. But on the other hand, look, it'll be fun. There are real issues to be discussed here. So I'm totally fine with hearing that.
I agree with you. There are definitely real issues to be discussed here right here. And part of it is, I think that, first of all, as I said before, there's no hate. There's no anything. I don't want to be confused. Both of these platforms, Candace Owens, whatever she does, these personalities, the platforms, Daily Wire, way bigger, way more successful than us. Ben Shapiro, way bigger, way more successful than us. Candace Owens, same thing. I don't know that we'll ever get to that level of success or anything like that, okay? And we applaud them. We appreciate them. We appreciate them being on our side. Different perspectives, understood, and all that. Now, Andrew Schultz took a really hard line and basically said some of the things that I was saying before. In a harsher way. I wasn't taking that kind of, in my opinion, I wasn't taking that kind of harsh angle. And Patrick PBD does talk about that, about, hey, Ben Shapiro only dates, only debates college kids and, and basically was saying, was just kind of saying like, okay, Ben Shapiro's, and look, people came back to my way of thinking, which is Ben Shapiro is very, very, very successful, but he's not the leader of the conservative movement. I don't know if anyone's listening to our show or not. I mean, but people do. We know that a lot of people do know who we are and follow you and Twitter and the radio show and everything like that. But basically, there's been a re-examination. I think for a long, long time. This is where I'm going with this. I think for a long, long time, people were thinking, hey, Shapiro and the Daily Wire, you can't go against them. They're leading the movement, blah, blah, blah. They're number one, all that type of stuff. And I think there's certain subjects, certain topics, certain positions that people maybe in the conservative movement thought that you couldn't take. I think that's changing. Okay. And I think that's why it's an interesting and important to have this debate. Now, who I think is going to win the debate? There's a lot to talk about here. I actually have to, when I brush my teeth, I have to spit. I don't know. So I'm going to have to do that real quick and let Paul talk and I'll come right back. Maybe a little too much information. But anyway, the point is like this. I really feel like, and I'm not trying to be a punk about it. I'm really not. But I think that Ben and the Daily Wire's views exceed their influence, if that makes sense. That's number one. Number two, I think there's other leaders that have stepped up. And I think that in this time, there's just so much more. There's a hunger and a vacuum for leadership. People want the Trump type of leadership. They don't want the Mitch McConnell type of leadership. Does that make sense, Paul?
It does. Look,
I'll be right back.
I guess we've talked about this before, and I'll just say it again. I personally have never looked to Ben Shapiro or the Daily Wire for leadership. So to me, it's just not a concern. It's not an issue. And sure, they're much more successful and bigger than we are and probably ever will be. But just because you're big doesn't mean you're a leader. And I just don't know how many people on a day-to-day basis are looking to Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens in terms of leadership or forming their ideas. I never have, and I don't think I ever will. Well, so it's just that's where I'm personally coming from.
Yeah, and a couple of things I would say about that too. I mean, and yeah, I don't know that. It's funny because the brand of Daily Wire and those hosts there and stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely, I think, more of an intellectual type of thing. It feels a little bit more like Hoover Institution. I don't want to throw necessarily one name or Heritage. I don't know. I don't want to throw one name or another, but obviously not a direct analogy. I don't know that Candace fit with that brand or Steven Crowder, who they were talking to, fit with that brand long term. You know what I mean? And maybe that's the thing. Now, no diss on Candace or Crowder anyway, but those two, I think right now, if you were to ask people and poll people, I don't know. I think that would be interesting. I mean, in some ways, Candace's name, and some people talked about that too. PPD talked about that, and maybe Schultz talked about that, is that, Candace's name is starting to eclipse that platform. And we've seen Candace jump from platforms before, with Charlie Kirk and stuff like that. And look, that happens. We know that. And Crowder was with the Blaze, and he did some stuff on his own, and he had done stuff before on Fox. I mean, look, that happens. We get it. I guess what I'm saying is the Daily Wire, in my opinion, to be that mega platform, it is a mega platform. Don't get me wrong. Again, I don't think we can ever be, we'd love to be that successful. Okay. But I'm just analyzing here. So it's no hate. We're glad that everyone's on our side. But I think the Daily Wire needs more, and they may need more, what I want to say, they need more cool factor. They're not cool. They may be smart and the establishment likes them, whatever, but they're not cool. They're trying to be cool. They're not cool. So that's why you have a Candace Owens. Candace Owens brings some cool factor. Brett Cooper brings some cool factor. Steven Crowder, as like wacky as that dude is, it was different. Brought a different mix. And Steven Crowder's got his own things going on right here. And I don't want, I'm not trying to turn this into a gossip thing, whatever. But Steven Crowder has his own things going on there. And so I think that, Tucker Carlson's not Andrew Tate, but Tucker Carlson's cool, right? I wouldn't call him super cool. I don't think he himself would call himself super cool. But Trump is cool because Trump has his hand on the pulse. He understands. He can walk in a UFC room and get a standing ovation. He can walk in with construction workers. He can be in a black tie, white tie event in New York City, whatever. Like Trump has that charisma. So I think that I understand. This is where it's really interesting, right? And it's the same thing with where this debate's going to go, I think, which is the party in America right now is more America first. That's where it is. The Daily Wire is a bit more narrow in their zone. Maybe that's the Dan Shapiro talking about the Overton window and all that type of stuff. A bit more narrow. If you want to, so two things can't be the same. You can't go super narrow, and I'm not saying they're super narrow, but broadcasting is broadcasting, biggest audience possible. You can't be number one, biggest platform, this and that, whatever, and then have a narrow range of views, right? And trying to cater to a more narrow Overton window, whatever you want to call it, right? So I do think that I don't know that I'll tune in live. I might tune in live. I'm not saying I won't. I don't watch either one of these hosts on a day-to-day basis. That's no slam. Lord knows I'm sure they're not watching me. I mean, or maybe a clip, whatever. I might watch a clip or something like that. But obviously, we say things, it gets out there. They say things, obviously it gets out there and stuff like that. And that's fine. I'm glad they're on the same side. I just can't watch 100 people. You know what I mean? Like nobody can, right? But I do think that I don't care about the personalities. Who likes who? Did you leave? Did you fire? Contract elapse? Whatever. I really don't care so much about that. Although I do think that if it does turn out, and I don't know, I'm not alleging anything. I think this is Paul. If it does turn out that she was fired, she was actually fired, then I think that's a story and that's some heat right there. Because then I think that amplifies this. That does turn it into a little bit of a different thing, right? And I have no idea. I'm just talking about hypothetical speculation. I have no idea, or anything. I'm not alleging anything. Okay. Putting everything aside, I think that there's nothing that's happened to surprise me one way or the other. I know you're probably in the same boat. I don't want to speak for you. You'll say what you want to say here and wrap up here in a second. I think that's not true of the average viewer out there. Maybe even the average Daily Wire viewer out there. I think that there's been sort of a like, whoa, wait a minute. And I think a lot of the people have maybe, I don't know what you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like people say the red pill, whatever, awakening, what all that. I don't know, but I think that maybe people weren't fully aware of that. Patrick Bet-David was going hard on that. Patrick Bet-David said, hey, I've got 4 kids. Shapiro's got this many kids. Candace has kids. I'm America first and hammering on that. And I think that I think that Candace wants to break down get some current definitions of some things, okay? And if you've been talking about free speech and cancel culture forever and ever and ever, and then it looks like you've gone to that because of whatever, potentially, or some people are confused or not sure. Again, I'm not alleging anything. I'm just talking about, my personal opinion of what, some of the things been saying out there. That's an interesting discussion. And then that goes back to the same thing, where it says, if there's any kind of, and this is anybody, this is Mitch McConnell, this is whatever. If you're not America first and on the MAGA agenda, then what are your positions on everything, right? Including foreign policy, right? But on everything. And I think that people want to know where people stand, especially if you're a leader in the, political media, or let alone a policymaker and stuff like that. And if you have a belief, whatever you believe, whatever it's, if it's Ukraine, if it's, England, or it doesn't matter, right? Mexico, why do you believe what you believe in, and how is that in America's interest? And can you articulate that? I don't know that we're going to learn a lot on this debate, but it is intriguing. Live, no moderator. Paul, anything can happen. Maybe that's what we should talk about too. Anyway, your comments, number one, on anything that I said over there. And number two, how interesting do you think this debate's going to get, that it has no moderator and that it's live? And who do you think's going to quote unquote win in this? Because I have some different thoughts about that. Go ahead.
Well, okay, a couple things. The first, look, in my opinion, this is my understanding of the situation. Look, Ben is, I think most people would define him as a neoconservative, which means very interventionist and focused heavily on the Middle East. Now, there are plenty of people who feel like that, but there are most people, I would say the majority of people in the current American First movement, who don't feel like that. On the other hand, I don't think that Candace has done an incredible job of articulating her own views, or I don't agree with some of the things that she said. I kind of find myself in the middle of those two. I'm certainly not a neoconservative.
No.
But I don't agree with some of the things that Candace has said. I think she's gone too far with certain things that she said. And it's just not the way I feel about things.
Let me say a couple things I'm sorry, just super quick. I've got to put this in real quick. Number one, exactly what you said. We're not endorsing anything anyone else has said. We're not, or anything like that. Paul speak for himself, I'll speak for, but I'm just in general, we're not endorsing anything anyone else has said, number one. And number two, just very quickly, to buttress your point, take Afghanistan, right? And I said this before on the show, on the news talk show. I'm jumping ahead. When you're dealing with any kind of, even domestically, but certainly anytime foreign policy situation, things can change on the ground very rapidly. There's been some new developments that have happened over the last week or two, whatever like that. You look at Afghanistan, what it looked like in 2000 and the mountains and trying to go after, some of the, Osama and that type of stuff, very different than what it looked like with the drawdown under Biden. And so when you take these hard, and I'm not, when you take a less nuanced position, potentially, we're not saying anyone in this, I'm just saying in general, hypothetically, away from these two, things can very rapidly change on the ground, and that can put your positions in a different position. I don't know if I'm articulating that quite right. I'm sure you can do a little bit better there on this, Paul. But you understand what I'm saying? Like you become almost beholden to the events on the ground that can change very rapidly. And in the fog of war, there literally is a war going on there. Anything can happen. That's where it becomes, the danger of taking a less nuanced position increases. That's all I'm trying to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, I just come in, so I agree with you. Yeah, but I'll just say this. You mentioned, okay, who might win the debate? Are we going to learn anything from the debate? I personally feel we're not going to learn anything in the debate, and both sides are going to claim victory. That's what I think this is going to be. That sounds so right. You're going to give you applause for that. That sounds, that sounds so right. Go ahead. That's basically what I think is going to happen. And I think that, look, I think that when it comes to structuring and making arguments themselves, like a neutral argument, Ben is better at that than Candace is. So whatever, but I don't agree with some of the stuff with Ben. So even if he makes a beautiful argument, doesn't mean I'm going to agree with it. So I think most people know where both of these two are coming from. That's why I don't think we're going to learn any magical thing from this. But look, it might be entertaining, and so great.
Well, you just said a lot right there, and I appreciate that. I mean, I agree with it. Both sides are going to claim. I wouldn't be surprised if both sides claim victory, and we don't. But I think the X factor is Candace Owens, because I think we know what Ben's going to say, because he's been saying it. In my opinion, well, let me put it this way: who knows? I don't know anything when I'm not alleging anything. But we've seen Ben. We haven't seen Candace on camera. We've seen Ben on camera now for last couple weeks, right? And I think I wouldn't be surprised if it would be some version of that. The X factor is Candace Owens, because Candace Owens is kind of fearless. And Candace Owens will, go right at it, ramp it up, stuff like that. And you don't know what she's going to say. And then you don't know how Ben's going to react live with no moderator. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to want to see, like, does Ben have an IFB? Does Candace have an IFB? Like it's like, I think they're going to be in the same room. I mean, like, I think that dynamic is interesting. We could see, much like Trump, dude, Trump can throw people off their game. Candace Owens might throw Ben Shapiro off this game. I think Ben Shapiro has much. Well, here's the other thing. I think Ben Shapiro, obviously, you've got a Harvard trained lawyer, very smart dude. I think UCLA undergrad. UC system like me, and he and I have a somewhat similar background. Up until law school, obviously, I did some more schooling and stuff like that. So Ben's a very smart guy, but Candace Owens might throw him way off his game. I think Ben has more to lose. I think Ben has to be more restrained. And so it's going to be, I think you could see Candace coming in. And here's the other thing. What about the prep? I mean, what if Candace comes in with some hot questions? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I definitely feel like Ben has styled himself as a debater. It's kind of like Ben has styled himself as a debator, has styled himself as a pro, has been at the Oxford Union, stuff like that. I guess I'll stop there. I think we don't know what Candace will do. I think Candace is willing to ramp it up and go there. I think to some extent, as you said, Paul, you have the Republican Party that's less interventionist, less neocon, less spending. I mean, again, you see Candace's talking points that are more in line with Trump. Shapiro less in line with Trump. In fact, Shapiro took a minute to endorse Trump. And so I think Candace is on firmer ground there. And I think that she may say, who knows what she's going to say. And that's why I might tune in. And then it's going to be interesting to see how Ben reacts. And I think that he's then in a tough spot. If he comes back at her, very impactfully, what are the optics of that? If he's very restrained or doesn't speak plainly and tries to do the legalese type of stuff or the wordsmithing, does that look too weak, too soft? I think Ben has more to lose. I don't want to overthink it, but I think that's the danger for Shapiro. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, look, I'll just say this. I think you have a lot higher opinion of Candace's debating abilities than I do. And I think that if Candace were to succeed in this debate, it will be on kind of like what you would call in wrestling cheap heat, which will be kind of like little catchphrases and stuff like this. It won't be on arguments. And I mean, again, I'm not a huge Ben Shapiro fan. The truth is, I'm not a huge fan of either one of them, although I respect both of them. They're just not, I'm not looking at these two for much. So I don't, I'm not expecting that debate's going to be some kind of a blockbuster.
Well, look, and that's a thing too. I mean, I think there's danger on both sides. I mean, if Candace Owens, I got to be careful how I say this. I got to think of the right analogy. I'm not going to use a name. I think if Candace Owens, if Ben Shapiro gets Candace off her game, if Candace Owens, starts gets a little too far out there or says something that's a little too whatever, so it's going to be very interesting. But again, I'm almost, I don't know. I'll see. I'm almost already over. I agree with Patrick Bet-David that they should have had they should have had the debate like a week or 2 weeks ago, right? I think that's when it was hot. And so who knows when they're going to get it together and when it's going to happen. But at the same time, it's always interesting. I mean, look, you had PBD and Tucker sitting down with Chris Cuomo, and that was interesting. Obviously, Tucker's been going around the globe and talking to different people. So I think more conversation is good. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. I think that we have to get away. There's some people that speculate like, you can't talk about these topics and you can't talk about certain things. That's crazy. That shouldn't be that way. So I think the extent that we're going to have a discussion is probably a good thing. So to the extent, I'll put this up on the stream one more time, to the extent that Candace does put this up right here, and it says major win for America, that she could be right. She could be right. It could be a win. It could be a win in this conversation, to have the conversation about where we're at and where it needs to go. And we'll see. We'll see. You know what I mean? And I may, if I say anything out of line here, then I'll apologize ahead of time, and I reserve the right to revise and extend. I may revise and extend what I said right here. But I think that, people have come to our position on this whole thing over time. I said this a long time ago. I've been saying the same thing. I do think it's going to be interesting to see this. I don't know if I'm going to see it live. Again, I'm slightly more compelled to watch this than I would either one of their content on a day-to-day basis, which is not much. You know what I mean? But again, full respect for their huge audiences and their major success. And I'm not trying to be a punk. I just only have, I'm busy. I only have so much time that I can do. And it's gonna, I'm gonna watch people like Tucker and PBD and Maria Bartiromo and different people like that, first and stuff. And there's plenty of others. I'm not trying to leave anyone out. I look at lots of different sources. Glenn Greenwald. All kinds of different people out there. And there's more all the time, because I always find new and interesting talent, and we're glad that they're on the same team here. So we'll see what it is. So anyway, that's what I want to say about that. Any final comments you have, Paul?
No, look, we'll see what happens, and we'll just evaluate it from there.
That's it. Well, I'm glad it's happening. I will say that. I'm glad it's happening, and let's have the conversation. And I think that, the truth always comes out. And let's see what it is, and let's hash it out. It's good to have a discussion, and we'll go from there. So we'll see. But the debate is happening, and we don't know exactly when, but we'll follow it and see what happens from there. Okay. So for Paul, I'm John. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you next time. We look forward to your comments, and we will try to respond to them in time.